Bankruptcy filings affect Detroit's poorest residents. For a perspective, I'd like to welcome from Detroit via telephone Peter Hammer. He is a professor of law and director of the Damon Keith Center for Civil Rights at Wayne State University Law School in Detroit. Also with us, Keith Naughton of Bloomberg News. He covers the city. He joins us from our bureau in Detroit. And Stanley Crouch of Aegis Capital. He's the chief investment officer. Peter Hammer, I wonder if you can just outline the context for this bankruptcy filing. You said just before you came on that this might actually be a good thing.
No, I want to say two things. First is that bankruptcy is not always bad, and people who don't understand bankruptcy don't understand that. Detroit can't move forward without retiring its long-term debt. Retiring its long-term debt will be an important part of any solution. But my major claim is the second point, which is if you look at Detroit in isolation and don't look at the region, you're missing the big picture.
Keith Naughton, come in on this. As Peter Hammer said, you got to think about it as a regional issue as much as it is an issue having to do with the city of Detroit.
Absolutely. I mean, even when you think of the auto industry, there are only 2 auto factories left within the city of Detroit. But in the broader region, there is all sorts of auto employment. So it's not proper to just look at the things that go on within the city limits of Detroit. You have to look at this whole economic area.
Keith, can you just give us an example of some of the organizations, some of the businesses that have come to Detroit? And, for example, we know that Whole Foods is opening a location there.
Yeah, Whole Foods has come in. And, you know, there are many other businesses beyond the famous auto companies. You know, Quicken Loans is based here. Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Little Caesars Pizza, owned by another sports owner, Mike Ilitch, who owns the Detroit Tigers and the Detroit Red Wings. So you do have a lot of sort of thriving business in this region that can be built upon.
Peter Hammer, I'm wondering if you could just talk about the historical implications and race in the issues related to Detroit.
Yeah, you can't understand Detroit without understanding race and racism. To me, the biggest illustration for your audience, you've got Macomb County and Oakland County, which are the 2 major counties surrounding Detroit, and you have their executives saying that the bankruptcy of Detroit cannot affect their bond ratings because they have no connection to Detroit. They have no connection because this is the most segregated city by race and by wealth that you have in the country. And if you have that degree of economic and racial segregation, you're not going to have a healthy regional economy.
Stanley Crouch, wonder if you can talk about the investment potential for Detroit following the bankruptcy, if and when it gets sorted out.
Sure. Well, I personally have a long history with Detroit. In my previous life, I financed a lot of educational facilities in the area. And
charter schools.
Yes, charter schools in the city itself. And I can tell you firsthand that putting a unit that revives neighborhoods and brings in the kids. The people of Detroit are great people. They're very caring, especially about their young people, and they're very seriously challenged. Some of the schools we did had over 95% kids that qualified for free and reduced lunch, so below the poverty level. And some didn't even have a parent in the home. So they were really challenged kids. And I said that if we don't do that and those sorts of initiatives, we can build more jail beds on the other side, because that's the alternative. So it is possible to have these revivals, and when we've done these projects, the entire neighborhoods get reignited, and it's generative, and as the guests have said, there is a lot going on in that economic region, and we've got to look at it that way.
Peter Hammer, should Rick Snyder be doing anything other than what he's already done, necessarily by appointing Kevin Orr?
Oh, absolutely. I was at the governor's news conference when he announced the financial emergency, and I challenged him at that place to, where's the emergency manager for regional transportation? Why aren't you knocking heads in Oakland County and Macomb County to say, get your act together? This is a region. You can't be economically segregated. You can't be racially segregated. And without leadership at the state and the national level, Detroit's problems will never be solved.
What is the likelihood that that will happen, Peter Hammer?
Not high. It's a Republican-controlled state, and we don't even have a bus system that connects somebody that lives in Detroit with somebody who can go to the region. And if you don't have a bus and you don't have a car, you're not going to get to a job.
Keith Naughton, is there some kind of irony in this, that you've got automobiles as the center, the core of Detroit's at least history, and yet, as Peter Hammer says, there's not even a bus link between the various counties?
Yeah, it is very ironic, Tim. And, you know, another aspect that really needs to be resolved, and and hopefully that can come through this process, is the issue of crime in the city of Detroit. You know, the slow response time by police, the murder rate is at a 40-year high. These are the things that are keeping people and businesses away from the city. So they need to return to a level of staffing and policing that once kept these issues at bay. Right now, they have a very big crime problem.
I want to thank you very much for joining us. Keith Naughton, he covers Detroit and the area for us at Bloomberg News, joining us from our Bloomberg Detroit Bureau. And I want to thank Peter Hammer, a law professor at Wayne State University.